Okay, we're going to mix it up, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to be looking at a 2023 Dynasty rookie mock draft with landing spots. So I'm going to be grabbing a mock draft from Tankathon here. We know that these mock drafts are really only going to get more and more accurate as we get closer to the actual NFL draft. Right now, we're operating with a limited amount of information. We got the Senior Bowl going on, though. Shortly, we will have the NFL Combine. But before we get into it, make sure you go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty. If you want to check out any of these player props for the Super Bowl, you can, of course, find the link to Underdog Fantasy in the description, in the comment section. When you sign up to Underdog with promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. And with the minimum of a $10 deposit, you are going to get our 2023 Dynasty rankings. I will say, I like that A.J. Brown line. I mean, I think he's going to have a great game. But I think that should be about it. Let's go through. Let's dive into this. Starting off at 1, I'm still going to be taking Bijan Robinson. I don't love the landing spot, though. I mean, if we're going to be honest, he goes to Tampa at 19. And if we're going to be looking at the overall situation he'd be stepping into, I think we can assume, well, this is a team that's going to massively struggle with no Tom Brady. Now, it's hard for me to sit here and act like Tom Brady was some phenomenal quarterback this season. Of course, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had a ton of struggles, but in reality, I feel like the second you actually remove Brady from this Bucs team, just from a morale standpoint, just from, I mean, everything that goes with him, I feel like this is going to be an offense that goes from being bad to really bad. They were barely 8-9 this past season. The one thing that honestly saved this team was the fact that if you're looking at Tom Brady and the raw amount of pass attempts the man had, I mean, he threw the ball 733 times. If you're including his playoff loss to Dallas, he actually threw the ball about 800 times, which is just absolutely absurd. So from a fantasy football standpoint, it actually covered up for the fact that this was a very bad team, but when you had that much volume going around, it didn't really matter. Well, you move Brady, and at the same time, you still have Rachaad White here. Now, of course, Bijan Robinson, if this ended up happening, he would go in and he would be the 3-down running back. He would be the day 1 starter, especially if he goes at pick 19 overall. This is a running back that has 3-down size. This is a running back that had 258 carries in 12 games this past season. But honestly, the most impressive thing, in my opinion, from a Bijan Robinson's profile is going to be his receiving game skill set. Now, this isn't a running back that just gets dump-offs. It's a running back that runs real routes, and he is massive. Literally, if you're looking at his yards per reception this past season, 16.5. But Rachaad White wouldn't turn into an absolute zero. It would be a bad offense. So I wouldn't like the landing spot. He's still 1 regardless, because our next guy at 2, Bryce Young, gets a pretty bad landing spot here where he's going to the Houston Texans at number 2. With Houston, we can assume that Brandon Cooks won't be with this team next year. They're probably going to be rolling with John Mechie as their number 1 wide receiver. Now, of course, there's a chance that they address the wide receiver position in this year's NFL draft with some of those extra picks that they have. Now, keep in mind, horrible wide receiver free agent class right now. So I doubt they're going to be able to sign someone where we think that all of a sudden it's a dramatically upgraded spot. It's a poorly run organization top to bottom. I think that we can safely say that. You really don't love drafting quarterbacks going to those situations where we've seen just historically inept organization. Think Cleveland, Baker Mayfield. Think the Jets, Zach Wilson. We've seen this over and over and over again. Well, with all that being said, I mean, Bryce Young's the number 1 quarterback in this class. Bryce Young looks like he is a phenomenal talent. If he got selected at number 2 overall, he would have all the job security in the world. Young isn't the best rusher in the world, but it will have some rushing production at the next level. I don't want to come out here and act like he's going to be running the ball for 30 yards a game. Of course, that may not happen, but an extremely efficient quarterback and played very well on an Alabama roster that wasn't as stacked as we've seen it in recent seasons. Now, going over to our next guy, C.J. Stroud, goes at pick 4 to the Indianapolis Colts. I don't really love this Colts situation either. Now, I would rather see a quarterback land with the Colts than the Houston Texans. But if we are seeing the NFL draft process and all the NFL scouts telling us, you know what, Bryce Young's that guy, Bryce Young, QB1, I'll just listen to them, because while the Colts are a better organization from how they've historically been run, at the same time, it's not like they have some great weapons there. You're looking at Alec Pierce, Michael Pittman as definitely better wide receivers than what you have in Houston, but not great. I mean, if you're looking at how bad every Colts quarterback was this past season, very similar to the Houston Texans as well, going to be a spot where the end of the day, you got a first-year head coach. Not too exciting. Now, at 4, what's interesting is Jahmyr Gibbs is going to the Los Angeles Rams at pick 37. Now, I will say this would be a surprise. They invested into Cam Akers in 2020 in the second round. Cam Akers looked good at the end of this season, and I would love to root for Cam Akers going forward. But if we are going to be realistic with ourselves, we've seen time and time again running backs that we thought had safe jobs just get replaced like that. I mean, if the Los Angeles Rams would think, oh, okay, well, yeah, no, Jahmyr Gibbs is a phenomenal running back talent, someone that we can't pass up on, and they feel the need that they have to go out there and draft him second, it would happen. If it did, he would automatically replace Cam Akers. Jahmyr Gibbs not going to be like Bijan Robinson, not going to see 20-plus touches every single game, but he will be a running back that sees every single target out of the backfield and kind of that DeAndre Swift, Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara, Austin Eckler profile where you have the red zone role and the usage in the receiving game. But now going over to our next guy, we are actually going to go Will Levis at 5. Will Levis goes to the Raiders here, pick 7. Which honestly may be a better situation than the Houston Texans, the Indianapolis Colts. You have Devontae Adams. You have Darren Waller, if that counts for anything at this point. You probably have Josh Jacobs under the franchise tag. I mean, I don't really know. I don't really care. Will Levis did demonstrate some rushing upside, not this season, but the season prior. He would be going as a top 10 pick here, so you would, in theory, have a decent amount of job security. I mean, we've seen usually when you fall outside the top 10 picks at the quarterback position, that's when they're willing to pull the Dwayne Haskins, the Josh Rosen, where if you're very bad early on in your NFL career, they're going to cut ties from you super early. But if you are that top 10 pick, if you fall in the camp of a Blake Bortles, a Mitchell Trubisky, then at that point, they'll let you fail over and over and over again, and you still have that safe job. Now, I know everybody's probably wondering, Mason, where is Jackson Smith-Njigba? You've been hyping him up for God knows how long now. You've been telling us since last year he's the next great thing. Well, he's going to be here at 6. The reason we have him this low is it is a nasty situation he steps into. Goes to the Baltimore Ravens at pick 23, which from a real life perspective makes a lot of sense. Like if you get Jackson Smith-Njigba going to Baltimore, I think that he can make a real difference for their team. But very similar to how we really never advocated to draft Rashad Bateman, regardless of if that was redraft or dynasty, where everybody loved Rashad Bateman. The thing is, if you're going to these offenses with a rush first quarterback that will have no passing volume, good luck finding a decent amount of fantasy value there. And if you're Jackson Smith-Njigba going to Baltimore, not only is the passing volume going to be limited, but you still have Andrews. Bateman will be healthy next year. I'm not a big Bateman fanboy by any means, never have been, but Bateman will be much better than someone like I love, Devin Duvernay. So he will be some target competition in a low volume passing attack. It'll be difficult to get too excited about that. Then at 7, we're going to go Jordan Addison, who actually goes pick 15 to the Green Bay Packers here. I mean, obviously, you'd love the Packers situation if we're going to be comparing it to Baltimore, but you'd still have some long-term concerns. You may end up having Christian Watson as the short-term wide receiver 1 there until Jordan Addison gets fully acclimated. And by the time Addison's fully acclimated at the NFL level, what's the situation with Aaron Rodgers? Would Rodgers still be in Green Bay? I mean, anyway, so I wouldn't really like that landing spot. And then we are going to have Quentin Johnston actually at 8, which is funny because in this mock draft, he was a top 10 draft pick. He goes to 9 to the Carolina Panthers, but to be fair, I can't imagine a worse situation than the Carolina Panthers. You have DJ Moore, who in my opinion is the wide receiver 1 there almost regardless. I think DJ Moore, at least in the short term, regardless of any wide receiver that would be drafted to Carolina, he would play over them. You have no answer at all at the quarterback position. I don't see how you get an answer anytime soon there. I feel like you'd just be stuck with garbage for quite some time. I would actually prefer Addison and Njigba as prospects overall as well. So if I'm going to prefer the other guys as prospects overall and Johnston's landing in a horrible landing spot, I don't really care that he is a quote-unquote top 10 draft pick. I'm going to prefer going with the other guys. Now let's go with our next player. Anthony Richardson at 9 actually goes to Washington. Pick 16 here. And the more I think about this, the more that I think, honestly, we're probably a little too low here. I mean, this would be a phenomenal spot. Now, of course, he wouldn't have just the guaranteed job security that you'd love to see. But at the end of the day, he's a quarterback with all the rushing upside in the world, which we know that if you're that starter at the NFL level with rushing upside, hell, you're going to be an automatic fantasy football contributor. It doesn't matter if you have the worst passing offense in the NFL this past season, you're still an elite fantasy quarterback if you can run the ball. I don't know what situation I'm talking about. You probably know. But anyway, Anthony Richardson will also be stepping into a situation where you have Terry McLaurin, where you have Jahan Dotson, where you have, a decent coaching staff overall, where it would be a much better spot than Young, much better spot than CJ Stroud. So the more that I think about this, the more that honestly, if this were to play out this way, I think Anthony Richardson would probably need to jump all of the wide receivers, probably would need to go to about 5 or 6. Of course, this is for Superflex leagues. Now, going over to our next spot at 10, we're going to go Zach Charbonnet, who goes to the Arizona Cardinals at 67. What's interesting is if you pull up this James Conner contract, honestly, I don't really understand why the Arizona Cardinals would decide to go through and take a running back this early, take a running back in the beginning of the 3rd round. They have James Conner with guaranteed money. If they were to move on from Conner, they'd save about $500,000. That's not happening. James Conner's 27 years old. James Conner's probably the starter this next season. But if any running back, especially a running back that looks like he can play on all 3 downs, a running back that can catch the ball of the backfield, would get this kind of draft capital in an offense that may not be a great real-life offense, but an offense that, historically speaking, has pushed the pace of play, that has provided a decent amount of fantasy points overall, I'd be fine ranking him here. Obviously, there's just that massive teardrop after 9 if this is how it were to play out. Then at 10, we're going to go Michael Mayer, who actually goes to the Detroit Lions at 18. Now, I understand, the Detroit Lions, who traded away TJ Hawkinson for a 2nd and 3rd round pick, they did it so they didn't have to pay TJ Hawkinson this next season. With TJ Hawkinson, this is a tight end that at the end of the day is going to need to get paid, drafted in 2019, blah, 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 blah. So maybe that's why it would make sense for the Detroit Lions to go through and trade him for a 2nd and a 3rd and then turn around and draft a tight end in the 1st round of the NFL draft this season. Now, personally, I don't understand it. Personally, I would not do it because TJ Hawkinson is a freaking beast and you're paying Jared Goff of all people. How can you not make the money work? Just a quick side note, very good tight end prospect, would be going to a very good offense, at least it was this past season. I don't love tight ends, at least not as rookies. We're drafting ETN over Kyle Pitts, which obviously looked horrible last offseason, but now maybe it's not too bad. I don't know. Let me know what you are thinking. It's just laughable that you trade Hawkinson and then possibly would go through and take a tight end in the 1st round. Who knows what's going to happen? And then now we have a rookie running back out of Texas A&M here at 12. I really don't care too much about Devin himself. What I really want to focus in on is the landing spot, the Miami Dolphins. He goes here, pick 78 to Miami. And if we're going to be looking at this Miami Dolphins landing spot, it's a dream spot in my opinion, but I feel like we've been saying this for years. It seems like every single offseason since 2014, we've been talking about, okay, well, who are the Miami Dolphins going to be taking at the running back position? The Miami Dolphins are the best landing spot for running back, blah, 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 blah. And they never really invest into the position. They never really go out of their way to look at someone. But at the same time, they have nobody under contract at the running back position this next season. So not only do they not have a starter, they have no depth either, where it seems like they honestly may need to go through and make some kind of play. Let me know what y'all are thinking here, but I just think that if you go to the running back room in Miami, even if they bring in a free agent this offseason, you're going to have such a clear path for a starting role, especially if you go on day 2 of the NFL draft, that we almost have to be excited about you regardless. But I think that's all we have for this video. Of course, if y'all enjoyed it, please go down there, drop a like. If you play Dynasty, subscribe to the channel. If you want to check out any of these Super Bowl props, find the link in the comment section. Find the link in the description. When you sign up with promo code FLOCK, Underdog is going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. And a minimum of a $10 deposit gets you our 2023 Dynasty rankings. But I think that's all I got for you. Thank you again. I appreciate you. And I hope you have a great day.